What's up, guys? Um, uh, how's it going? I am currently about 27 and a half hours removed from my last cup of coffee or serving of caffeine, and I am stuck in second gear right now. I got a major headache going on. Um, can't really put together too many full sentences in a row. I think this is the most I've been able to do that at this point today. Um, and I wanted to get back to a video here in terms of the prep update, not only to just kind of hash this out a little bit, but to give a little background on why I'm making this change and obviously update the prep as well and how they coincide. So bear with me here. I'm not running at full capacity just yet. So I'll be speaking pretty deliberately, and I apologize for that if that gets boring or annoying. But so the last couple of weeks here in prep, um, uh, I just completed the 11th week. The ninth week sucked dick. Um, that's when I got injured. That's when what else? I was going through some legal stuff. Speaking of legal stuff, I was expecting a call from an accountant. So if I cut out abruptly at any time, that means they decided to call me, but they're 10 minutes late. So thanks, LegalZoom. Anyway, I was going through some legal stuff. Was really stressed out. Um, Found out my measuring system in terms of body composition was way off. Then week 10 kind of bounced back a little bit, but there was still, I was noticing at least one day on the weekend because in week 9 it was a couple days on the weekend where I kind of just said F it on my diet and ate whatever the hell I wanted to, but that was, I think, a lot of that to do, or a lot to do with that was because I was just out of the gym for so long. I was pretty demoralized that I had been injured. I'm thinking, oh, the sky is falling. I can't get in the gym. I can't continue my prep the way I want it to. And internalizing all that, and then I just turned to food. Um, yeah, because that was about 4 days in a row off from the gym. And the first couple of days, and the first half of the third day, I was able to kind of get my diet in check pretty well. But then all bets were off after that. So then I kind of tightened it up a little bit the next week, but I think I went too far to the other end of the spectrum because I went from eating roughly 2,600 calories a day to trying to get down to around 2,100. And again, I was able to have things go pretty well up until the weekend, and then I think at a certain point that diet, that deficit became too aggressive, even though it didn't necessarily show up on the scale. Because that week, my weight kind of, well, it did a bit. It went down from 181 to right around 178 and stayed right around that mark. Um, and I think that was reflective of how aggressive the deficit was. And I on the whole, I think it was too aggressive because by the end of the week, I was fed up with it and went back to overeating. And then this week, I decided to add calories back to kind of preemptively get in front of that. And I was eating around 3,000 calories a day, which was too much to begin with, because my weight went up from 178-ish, 179, to 182, 181 throughout the week on average. So I was gaining actually weight on the scale, which is the opposite of what I'm trying to do, kind of, because I'm not necessarily trying to increase scale weight at this point. I'm either trying to maintain it or decrease it because the way I have my deficit set up, or the way I'm trying to set up my deficit, is to encourage fat loss while also maintaining or maybe minimally gaining some muscle at the same time. So oh, there we go. Here's the accountant. So I'll talk to you guys in a sec. All right, yeah. So that person or accountant or whatever did call. Completely forgot where I was at or what I was talking about. Probably had something to do with this past week and how I added back calories and how that was pushing the scale up. And yeah, I think that's what I was talking about. And like I said, I'm trying to cut fat right now. That probably wasn't happening with the amount of calories I was eating, but still by the end of the week, and it wasn't any type of stress induced by such a big deficit because I was eating 3,100 calories a day, and that wasn't even a deficit at all. So it was coming from somewhere else. And I'll be completely honest. I have very strong, like psychological, emotional type of ties to food and just to most any type of, I guess you could say, social or like comfort type thing that obviously is, that I find pleasing or whatever. Like I feel like I have kind of an addictive personality and I wrote about this in the caffeine article. When I really like something, I'll just do whatever I can to keep it in my life. When I don't like something, it's not a part of it, and there's really no gray area. And I think, like obviously, like large amounts of food are clearly something I like. And so even with all the stuff I've learned over the course of time in terms of how to aid compliance, um, sticking to specific times, specific eating windows to kind of regulate your appetite, sticking to a pretty limited selection of food to regulate your appetite. And that seemed to work for, about 9 weeks at a time. But I'm at this point now where psychologically it seems to be a little much. Um, and maybe this is to say my personal amount of time spent chasing this one rabbit in terms of fat loss may be 9 to 10 weeks at a time at the moment, and given my stress tolerance. And granted, I do have a lot of stress in my life right now. I'm opening a business. I'm out some money. I'm trying to build a clientele. I'm trying to produce content. I'm trying to edit content. I'm trying to work on my own self. I'm trying to get into the gym every day. And to be honest, in prep, I don't really see a lot of people. Um, it's hard to schedule social things when you train in the evening and you literally come home and go to bed by like 10 or 11 o'clock, because that's the priority, but it doesn't really work with society and how that's built. So there is some seclusion there. Um, and this is not to be like, oh, poor me. This is the truth. This is what's going on, and this is what a lot of people don't take into account. And granted, it's still in the long term. The cost benefit is it's way better because if I actually do achieve my goals, then that's going to be one of the greatest accomplishments. Make me the most happiest I could possibly be. But the interim to get there, it's rough, and there's no real way to sugarcoat it. And maybe this is I was able to nail it for 9 months or what I thought, not nail it as hard as I thought I was nailing it, but based on my measurement techniques. But which, as an aside, I'm getting a DEXA scan every other week now to kind of fortify that because I don't really trust my chisel anymore. Has a mind of its own. But um, yeah, up until that point, everything was kind of going pretty well, and after that point, it kind of shook up my foundation. It kind of shook up where I was at in terms of frame of mind. In terms of I went from like, oh, dude, I'm killing it. I'm knocking it out of the park. I'll be 10% in April, and to boom, you got injured. Boom, there's like some legal trouble. Boom, um, no, you're not. You're actually a little bit fatter than you thought. Um, everything at once, and just dealing with that. Trying to take more walks, trying to meditate more. I have Headspace, highly recommend that app, but it's tough to just sit there and be present, even when it's a guided app. So I'm trying to think, like, because clearly I turn to food when there's some sort of anxiety, right? And what exaggerates anxiety and what could take away anxiety. And so in terms of uh, the one aspect of anxiety, I guess, may be like decision fatigue, and I basically removed that from my life. I shop based on my macros. I prep my meals ahead of time, and in theory, that should keep me at a standard, at a certain level of intake that I decide that I have the control over. So there is no anxiety when it comes to, oh, what am I going to eat today? Blah, blah, blah. Am I going to go to the gym today? Like, no, you're going. If the calendar day ends in day, you're going to the gym. Um, and so like that is not a source of anxiety for me. I think one of the sources of anxiety for me is seeing that like I thought everything was going great and then it kind of crumbled. And not necessarily, I've still made good progress, but it's not anywhere near where I thought it was. So that emotionally and like ego wise for me was not great. Because I wasn't like lying to you guys, but it's literally not, I wasn't telling you. I was telling you what I thought was true, but it didn't end up being true. And the only way I could find that out is through getting a DEXA scan and having that slapped in your face. Um, so that was a source of anxiety for me. Just like I said, the business startup and the legal stuff, that's all completely foreign to me. And so um, I, I think like all that at once is just kind of pushing the anxiety and the self control to its limit. And I think on top of that, the only other avenue that I haven't tried to attack that from, because like I said, I'm meditating more, I'm walking more, I'm sleeping more, I'm watching a comedy special every night on Netflix because that makes me, clearly I'm getting a laugh out of it or something. The only way, and this is part of the reason why I wrote about the caffeine and stimulants, the only way that I haven't attacked this issue is by trying to reduce caffeine consumption. And people, you might be like, oh, well, caffeine suppresses your appetite. I thought it's like, well, that's maybe not in the research. But I noticed this really weird thing, and lately I've been having quite a bit of caffeine and even like nicotine. Sometimes I would have the nicotine pouches of nicotine gum. And like I said, addictive personality, I don't have any type of moderation, so it's like the whole fucking pack of nicotine gum in one day, or 700 milligrams of caffeine in one morning. And this kind of peak and valley effect, I think, was not only playing with my nerves, clearly, at that level of intake, but also impacting my appetite. Because I would notice even when people think it suppresses your appetite, um, if I would have anything, if I like, because habitually would drink like 2 cups of coffee a day, which is like 300 milligrams caffeine, which is not bad, but it would be very, very easy to just double that or go even above that. Because there's days where I have more than a gram of caffeine, which is terrible. Like my heart's like, no. Um, but anything up to like 600 milligrams or even above, um, I noticed that maybe it might suppress my appetite in the interim, but like when that effect is gone, by comparison, my appetite is through the freaking roof. Like I'll eat a house. So I noticed on those days where I did consume the majority of calories, I I had quite a bit of caffeine on those days. So and that's a complete anecdote. But there are also obviously other benefits of reducing stimulant intake, and that's improved sleep, improved especially someone prone to anxiety like myself. It's genetic. Improving that. Caffeine doesn't really aid performance in the gym unless you're tolerant in the first place. It doesn't provide any kind of psychological boost unless you're tolerant in the first place. And with my habitual intake, I was above that tolerance threshold easily. At that point, you need caffeine just to kind of function as a normal person, which is not great. So this withdrawal period sucks right now, but I really want to see if that helps regulate my appetite, my anxiety, and also it could increase the stress hormone cortisol, or specifically in relation how that relates to testosterone in kind of a dose-dependent manner. So your testosterone cortisol ratio is kind of a marker for how anabolic you are, how much muscle you're building or have the potential to build. And high dose caffeine directly negatively impacts that ratio. So, um, not great in terms of someone who has a physique goal in mind. So this is kind of like the last ditch effort, and this week I really want to see this through. Um, really eliminate stimulants and see how much of an impact that has, and hopefully stick with that for the long haul. Because if that has any kind of impact in terms of my overall anxiety and my appetite regulation, that's exactly what I need right now to get me back on track. And if not, I really have to consider not shutting it down, but just kind of taking my foot off the gas for the time being. Um, it's not really something I want to do, but just kind of reassess and take some time to figure out what's really going on here. But we'll see. I don't want to paint this doom and gloom picture. Um, and obviously, I'm in caffeine withdrawal right now because it is a drug, and you really suck at forecasting your emotions. So right now, when I feel pretty shitty, I think life is just going to be pretty shitty, but that's not going to be true in maybe a day or two. So we'll see. We'll cross that bridge when we get there. But just a lot of things going on psychologically right now that I'm trying to take care of that will carry over into the physical. Still trying to come out with some good content. And great news, I have 2 clients now. Shout out to them if you're watching this. And potentially a third. I will be on the phone or on Skype with him in 10 minutes. So um, just really great. I mean, like I'm trying to apply these principles to myself, and I have unique, a unique context and scenario for why um, I may be reacting to some of these things the way I am, and I'm trying to attack that as specifically as possible, and that's exactly what I'm going to be trying to be doing with these folks here, and hopefully have a lot of fun and give them a lot of progress and results in return. So if you want to hop aboard, and I'm trying to think in the newsletter there is you can there's a way to get to the coaching tab. But yeah, really looking forward to that, and a lot more stuff coming out with the Bayesian research team, and just trying to stay active on Instagram and the newsletter, which will come out after this. But yeah, thanks for sticking around. I hope to have some really good stuff to report to you next week in terms of appetite, anxiety, all that. Definitely this week gained a few pounds on the scale. Um, in terms of body fat, on average, it went down, but again, my chisels, whatever. I'm going to be going off DEXA scans as soon as I get more of those. Technically, my lean mass went up, and that could be by 2 factors. If the chisel is reading glycogen and water content as lean mass, just like a DEXA does, then that could explain it. I was also in the gym every single day of the week, which that could be influencing that as well. But I don't think I've gained a couple pounds in a week, especially considering how advanced I am relative to my genetic potential. Fat mass went up, marginally based on these numbers, but there's also kind of a delay in the effect that I see. So I think how much I ate yesterday, which was a ton. It was like 5,500 calories. It was great, but not sustainable. But that will show up on the scale in like the next 2 or 3 days, and that will peak over time. That doesn't show up today. So I think my body's still like trying to cope with what the hell happened. and that'll appear over the coming days. But so yeah, hopefully more to report in a more jovial state of mind next time. But that's it for now. Got to run, but thanks for sticking around, and I'll talk to you guys soon.